It's raining again. The kind of quiet, drizzling rain that doesn't shout, doesn't rush, just falls. Steady, soft, like breath on a window pane, like memory. It clings to the wide windows of the Kingsley estate, a house built like a monument to silence. Inside, the walls don't echo. They absorb. Marble floors reflect nothing. Hallways stretch too long. Lights stay on, but they do not warm. Julian Kingsley hasn't been home in weeks, maybe months. Even he has lost count. A man like him doesn't need a calendar. Just contracts, closing bells, and clean checklists. He signs documents in cities he doesn't remember. Sleeps in hotels that feel like airports. Walks into meetings with the same iron face. He built his fortune from steel and silence. Lost his wife in childbirth. Twin sons born minutes apart. Noah and Elias. They never cried. Never screamed the way newborns do. Nurses tilted their heads. The doctor frowned. Julian just nodded. And when his wife's heart stopped while he was reading a quarterly report from Tokyo, he simply whispered, "Tell me when the funeral is done." That was 6 years ago. And now he arrives home early. His flight was canceled. A freak thunderstorm. He never likes surprises. But tonight, he steps into his grand foyer unannounced. Umbrella dripping, coat soaked, briefcase in hand. The butler isn't at the door. The housekeeper is nowhere to be found. Something is off. A laugh soft, too soft. He pauses. Then, another sound. A hum. And then, is that singing? Julian furrows his brow. His sons don't sing. They don't speak. They don't emote. They stare. They stack blocks in a line and knock them over in a rhythm only they understand. Therapists come and go. Nannies don't last. Teachers quit mid-month. The mansion remains quiet. Always quiet. But not tonight. Julian walks toward the east wing. Past the sunroom. Past the library no one enters. The voices grow faint again. A lullaby now. Words he hasn't heard in a long time. Not since. And then he sees her. In the children's playroom. A room he never enters. A black woman, maybe in her mid-30s, sits cross-legged on the floor. Her hair is wrapped in a deep brown scarf. Her skin glows under the warm light. She's barefoot. A soft, faded cardigan hangs loose over her shoulders. Noah is leaning against her. Elias is touching her hand. They're humming. She doesn't see him yet. Julian freezes in the hallway's shadow. There's a notebook on the floor, filled with crayon drawings and traced letters. Shapes, sunflowers, hands. A bluebird. One of the boys has drawn his hand over hers. Julian doesn't know her name. He hired her 2 weeks ago through the agency. Some emergency placement when the last therapist fled in tears. He didn't even look at the file. Didn't care. He just wanted the noise to stop. Now there's a different kind of silence in the room. Alive. Full. Sacred. Julian steps back, but his wet shoe squeaks. The woman looks up, eyes locking with his. She doesn't panic. Doesn't jump to her feet. Doesn't apologize. She raises a finger to her lips, calm and soft. "Stay quiet," she whispers. Her voice is low. Not rude. Not fearful. It's reverent. Like a chapel hush. Julian blinks. His briefcase nearly slips from his hand. No one has ever told him to stay quiet before. No one alive, at least. Before he can reply, Elias reaches out and tugs the hem of the woman's sleeve. He points to the drawing again. A bird in blue, wings outstretched. She smiles gently and resumes the lullaby, this time without words. Just breath and tune. Julian watches. He doesn't know what to do with his hands. His coat is still dripping. His tie is too tight. She continues humming as if he's not there. Not ignoring him, just refusing to break the moment. And maybe that's the first crack. He walks away. Quietly. He doesn't go to his office. He doesn't call the agency. He doesn't demand an explanation. He walks to the guest wing. Loosens his tie. Sits in the dark. The rain still falls. Somewhere in this house, his children are humming with a stranger. And for the first time in 6 years, he doesn't want it to stop. Morning comes slowly. Not with alarm clocks or phones vibrating on glass tables. Not with staff scurrying across the marble tiles. Just soft sunlight pressing against the sheer curtains. Just birds, real birds, somewhere in the garden, singing without permission. Julian Kingsley hasn't slept like this in years. When he finally stirs, the house feels changed. Not louder, just different. He sits up in bed, eyes adjusting to the light. No news anchor's voice echoes from the TV. No emails flood his screen. There's no buzz, no static, no suffocating silence. Just breath, stillness. And then, faintly, he hears it again. A lullaby, this time with no words. Just melody, floating through the air vents like memory. He throws on a sweater over his undershirt, feet slipping into the leather house shoes he rarely uses. For a man who owns a 10-bedroom estate, he's rarely home long enough to wander it. But now he follows the sound. Down the corridor, past the kitchen, where he hears the rhythmic clink of a spoon stirring something in a ceramic bowl. Not mechanical, human. He peeks in. She's there. Again. The maid. But this time she's not humming. She's reading softly. Not aloud, just under her breath. From a worn, leather-bound book. Her lips move. Her eyes move faster. She stirs porridge absent-mindedly while the boys sit at the wooden breakfast table. Noah is drawing. Elias is arranging berries in a perfect circle on his plate. Neither child looks up, but they're calm, settled, not locked in their usual patterns of distress. No stimmying, no head-banging, no vacant stares. Julian doesn't enter the kitchen. He stands behind the wall, still watching, still unsure. The woman turns the page, then speaks. They both like circles, she says. Her voice carries across the space like honey. No tension, no fear. She isn't startled by his presence. She knew he was there all along. They like repetition, she adds. But not just to control. Sometimes to feel safe. Julian steps into view. Her name. He still doesn't know her name. She turns, wiping her hands on her apron, offering a nod but no smile. Not yet. I'm Raina, she says simply. The agency called me Ruth by mistake. But I go by Raina. Julian nods slowly. Julian Kingsley. I know. Of course she knows. He glances at the boys. They're calm. Raina nods. For now. Some days are harder. But this morning, they woke up humming. Humming. Yes, Noah first. He was tapping the rhythm against the headboard. Elias joined in. Same tune I sang last night. Julian exhales slowly. They've never. I know, she says again, but softer this time. It unsettles him, this quiet knowing. No applause. No miracle claims. Just presence. Just witnessing. Are you a therapist? He asks, crossing his arms. No. A special ed teacher? No. He frowns. Then how? I listen. She says it like it's a whole profession. And maybe in this house it is. Raina walks toward the counter and picks up a blue notebook. She places it on the island between them. Julian doesn't move. They each have one, she says. I started sketching shapes they respond to, sounds they lean into. I write what I observe. It helps me see their patterns, not just their behaviors. Julian stares at the book. There's nothing fancy, just ink, doodles, little scribbles beside timestamps. But it's more than anyone's done in months. Years, maybe. Why the notebooks? He asks. Because your wife used them, she says gently. He stiffens. I found them in the linen closet. Labeled. One for each week of her pregnancy. Notes. Lullabies. Letters to the boys she hadn't met yet. Julian looks away. She called them silent prayers. Raina's voice softens, almost vanishes. I thought. Maybe the silence didn't end with her. No reply, just stillness. Then Elias drops a berry. It rolls off the table, hits the floor. Raina stoops quickly, picks it up, and gently guides his hand to place it back in the circle. Elias lets her. No resistance. Julian notices her touch. Not intrusive, not correcting. Just reassuring. He clears his throat. They usually react badly when someone touches their food. Reina doesn't explain, doesn't justify. She just says, I don't touch first. I wait. Then they lead. Julian doesn't know what to say to that. Instead, he watches as Noah flips to a new page in his sketchpad. A wobbly circle. A cloud. Then, something unexpected. A stick figure. Smiling. Next to two smaller stick figures. One of them has a line drawn between them, a hand. Reina glances at it. Doesn't interrupt. Julian is frozen. That's the first time Noah's drawn people. I'll make more porridge, Reina says, turning back to the pot. Julian remains still. He's not hungry, but something is shifting. As he leaves the kitchen, he looks back one last time. The twins sit quietly, eating. Reina hums again, not to fill silence, but to bless it. And deep in his chest, something begins to thaw. It doesn't break yet, but it moves. The rain returns by afternoon. Not heavy, just steady. A hush falling over the estate like a second skin. The sky outside hangs low and gray, the kind of sky that makes everything feel suspended, like the world is holding its breath. Julian sits in his study, but he's not reading. The book is open, pages untouched. The fireplace crackles, but he doesn't feel warm. On the edge of the table sits one of the blue notebooks. He didn't mean to bring it with him, but he hasn't let it go. On the cover, a child's drawing. 3 stick figures. One small, one tall, one with a round head. A faint, unsteady heart drawn between them. Julian closes the book. A knock on the door. Soft. He expects the butler. Or silence. But it's her. Reina. She enters slowly, carrying a folded blanket. Noah's asleep, she says. But Elias has a fever. Julian's expression shifts. Since when? A few hours. I tried a cool cloth, but I think it's rising. Julian stands instantly. Call Dr. Hamid. He has privileges at. He doesn't like doctors. Julian frowns. He doesn't get to choose. He's a child. He's not afraid of medicine, Reina says calmly. He's afraid of cold hands. Sharp lights. People speaking too fast. Too loud. I'll get the car. Julian. He pauses. That's the first time she's said his name aloud. Reina steps forward. He's calm now. If we rush him into a cold clinic, he'll shut down completely. Let me try first. Julian exhales through his nose. He's not used to people defying him. Especially not in his own house. But this is the 3rd time she's done it. And somehow, each time, the house seems better for it. He nods once. Reina disappears down the hallway. Julian follows, slower. In the boys' shared room, Elias lies curled under a handmade quilt. His lips are dry. His forehead glistens. He's not crying, but his eyes are wide. Alert. Watching Reina. She hums again. A soft tune. No words. Just rhythm. She dips a cloth into a bowl beside the bed, wrings it gently, and presses it to his wrists. Then to the soles of his feet. Then behind his ears. Julian watches, confused. Cooling points, she says without turning. Places the body reads temperature quickest. Elias closes his eyes. Reina leans close. I'll need ginger, lemon, the kind of honey that hardens in glass. Julian doesn't ask questions. He just leaves. Downstairs. Past the marble. Into the kitchen. He barely remembers where the herbs are. The last time he touched raw ginger was maybe never. But he finds it. Somehow. The old gardener once kept a pantry of preserves. Julian never asked why. Now he's grateful. He brings them up awkwardly. Like a boy who's fetched tools for someone who knows what they're doing. Reina mixes them into warm water. She blows over the cup. Tests the temperature with the inside of her wrist. Then dips a spoon. Gently. She presses the tip to Elias's lips. He accepts it. Swallows. Doesn't gag. Doesn't flinch. Julian exhales. Where did you learn this? He asks. Reina shrugs. My grandmother. She raised me. Said healing starts before medicine. With presence. Julian looks at her. Not just her words. her presence. There's no urgency in her voice, no panic, just quiet certainty, steady hands. He sits at the edge of the bed, careful not to disturb. Raina stands back. Elias turns slightly toward Julian. His fingers move, a slow, deliberate tap on the quilt. Julian notices. What's he doing? His way of saying he sees you, Raina says softly. Julian's throat tightens. You sure? No, but I believe it. Silence. Then Julian says the thing he's never said out loud. They told me they'd never connect with anyone. Raina says nothing. I stopped trying, he adds. She still doesn't speak. Instead, she kneels. Not to him, not to the moment, just to Elijah. She brushes a curl from his damp forehead. Children don't stop reaching, even when they stop speaking. They wait for someone to listen in a language deeper than words. Julian nods slowly. You really believe that? I wouldn't be here if I didn't. The room is still. Safe. Raina reaches into her cardigan pocket and pulls out one of the notebooks. She flips to a fresh page. Hands it to Julian. You try. He blinks. What? Draw something. Anything. A house. A leaf. Your face. Let them see how you see. He stares at the blank page. He's signed billion-dollar deals. Redrafted entire portfolios. But here, in the soft lamplight, with a crayon and a child watching, he's never felt more unsure. His hand trembles. But he draws. A shaky outline of a house. A bird. A hand. Elias opens his eyes again. Then, slowly, quietly, he reaches out and touches the crayon in Julian's hand. Julian stops breathing. Raina doesn't speak. She just smiles. Not wide. Not for show. Just enough. Just real. Julian turns to her. Raina, what do you want from this? From them? I want them to feel safe, she says. That's all. And what about me? He asks before he can stop himself. What if I don't know how to be safe? Raina meets his eyes. Her voice doesn't change. Then we'll start with silence. She walks out, notebook in hand. Julian sits by Elias. He doesn't speak, doesn't move. He just stays and listens to the soft rain, to the boy's breath, to a silence that no longer feels empty. The door hasn't been opened in 6 years. It's not locked, just avoided. A narrow panel at the end of the east hallway, painted soft blue. The exact shade she chose when she was still alive. Julian passes it every day, but his eyes slide past it like fog over a mirror. The nursery, still called that, even though the boys are 6 now, even though they've never set foot inside, even though their cribs were moved to another room after her death. The nursery remains untouched, suspended, preserved in silence. Until tonight, the house is dim, quiet. The storm has passed, but its breath lingers in the air. Windows cooled by the leftover chill, plants damp, the smell of earth rising faintly through the vents. Julian walks the hallway alone, barefoot, sleepless. In his hand, a notebook, one of Raina's. But this one is different. It doesn't belong to either boy. It's old, faded. Found earlier that afternoon in the laundry cupboard behind a box of sewing thread and unsent cards. He opened it out of boredom. Now he can't close it. Inside are lullabies, sketched names, the handwriting soft and curved, punctuated by little hearts and crooked stars. If one cries, hold them both. If they sleep, don't move. Let the house hold its breath with them. If I don't make it, tell them I waited for them. He reads that line again and again. He's standing outside the nursery door now. Raina had said nothing about it. She hadn't asked. She hadn't hinted. But yesterday, while organizing books for the boys, she'd placed one gently beside the door. Good night, Moon. A soft gesture. An invitation, not a push. Julian places his hand on the doorknob. Turns easily. The scent hits him first. Lavender. Vanilla. Something like warmth held too long in a sealed jar. He steps in. The light is soft. Faint floral curtains hang beside the window. The walls are painted with clouds. Real clouds, not cartoonish ones. White over blue. She painted them herself. He remembers. Took her 3 days. She said the boys needed to dream even before they could see. There are 2 cribs, tiny and used. Stuffed animals lined up like they're still waiting for small hands. A rocking chair. A framed picture of the sonogram. A mobile that hasn't turned in years. Julian doesn't move. He can't. He stands in the middle of the room, the notebook trembling in his hands. His throat tightens, not with tears, not yet, but with the kind of ache that lives in the bones. Then he hears it. Bare feet. He turns. It's Raina. She doesn't speak. She just stands in the doorway, as still as the moonlight behind her. The boys are not with her. Julian tries to speak, but nothing comes out. Raina steps into the room slowly. She walks past him, gently brushing her fingers along the edge of the crib. Then the rocking chair. Then the shelf of books, where she picks up a thin, dust-covered Bible with a ribbon sticking out. She opens it, flips a few pages, then stops. She wrote here, Raina says softly. Julian steps closer. She shows him the inside cover. No matter how silent they are, God, please teach me to listen. It's dated 6 days before the twins were born. Julian blinks fast, swallows, but the lump won't go. She knew, he whispers. Raina nods. She felt them. She didn't see them as broken. He looks at her. You do. No, she says gently. But I see you. Julian turns sharply. What do you mean? I see how you walk around them like glass. I see how you flinch when they hum. I see the way you open your mouth to speak. But don't. He stiffens. I'm not judging you, Raina adds softer. I'm just saying maybe it's time. For what? He asks. To grieve out loud. That breaks something. Not loudly, but enough. Julian turns back to the crib. He kneels. Not out of reverence. Not for a show. Just because his legs give way. He places the notebook on the floor. Then his hands. Then his forehead. Raina doesn't move. She doesn't touch him. She doesn't speak. She just sits in the rocker. Opens the old Bible. Begins reading silently. The only sound in the room is Julian's breathing, jagged. Raw, but real. Eventually he sits back. Eyes red. Chest hollowed out. He looks at Raina. I left her here. She looks up. I left her to die alone. I was on a plane. I told her I'd be back for the birth. But I missed it. He pauses. The words weigh more than grief. They carry shame. I missed it all. Raina closes the Bible. Places it gently back on the shelf. She never wrote about you being gone, she says. Only about how much she hoped you'd love them the way she already did. Julian drops his gaze. You still can. The sentence lands like light through stained glass. Slow. Beautiful. Undeniable. He looks around the room again. He sees the mobile, the blanket, the tiny shoes, and then a sound. Footsteps. Small. 2 pairs. He turns toward the doorway. Noah and Elias. Standing barefoot. Holding hands. One of them clutches a crayon. The other, the edge of a lullaby book. They don't enter. They just look. Julian meets their gaze. He doesn't speak. He just opens his arms. The boys hesitate. Then Elias walks forward. Noah follows. They sit beside him. No words. No questions. They just sit. And in the middle of that nursery, that tomb of memory, something begins to live again. Raina watches from the rocking chair, her face still, but her eyes soft with knowing. Julian closes his eyes, not to escape, but to remember, and maybe to begin again. The piano has not been touched since the funeral. It stands at the far end of the parlor, beneath a skylight that casts long, moody shadows across its surface. Black, sleek, silent. It used to sing. Once, before the boys were born, Julian's wife played every evening. Soft jazz on Sundays, lullabies on stormy nights. Sometimes she played with only one hand, the other resting on her belly, humming under her breath. The house felt alive then, full of small, warm echoes. Now it's just a sculpture, a memory in wood and ivory, until today. Reina walks into the parlor just before sunset. Her bare feet pad across the tiled floor, quiet but deliberate. The boys trail behind her, hesitant but curious. Noah clutches a spiral notebook. Elias carries a stuffed rabbit, missing an ear. Julian stands at the edge of the hallway, watching from behind the column. It's been 4 days since the nursery was opened, since he wept on the floor beside the crib, since the boys chose to sit beside him instead of fleeing, since he began sitting through breakfast, not speaking much, but not disappearing either. Now he watches Reina approach the piano. She doesn't sit. She places her hand gently on the top and waits, as if asking permission, as if waiting for something old and sacred to give its blessing. The room is quiet. Then Reina opens the lid. The keys are dusty, a little yellowed. She lifts the lid higher. The bench groans as she pulls it out. The boys stand near the door watching closely. Reina doesn't press the keys. She turns to them. "Do you want to try?" Noah tilts his head. Elias clutches the rabbit tighter. Julian steps forward a little but says nothing. Reina doesn't coax. She just sits on the bench. Leaves room. Noah is the first to approach. He sits beside her. Reina doesn't touch the keys. She lets Noah do it. The boy raises his hand, pauses, then presses a single note. High, clear, then another, and another. They're not in rhythm. They don't form a song, but they're sound, living sound. Elias inches forward, climbs up beside his brother. Reina shifts gently, giving him space. Julian walks into the room now. No one stops him. The boys begin pressing more keys. They aren't chaotic. They aren't banging. They're exploring. Reina hums. Not a tune, but a soft tone that matches the keys they're pressing. Like grounding the notes. Like translating them. Julian finds himself standing closer than expected. Reina looks at him once, then gestures wordlessly to the bench behind her. He hesitates, then sits. Not at the keys. Behind them. The boys don't look up, but their bodies relax slightly. Julian leans forward. Not close enough to crowd. Just enough to feel them breathing. Noah begins pressing a pattern, 3 notes, then silence. 3 notes, then silence. Elias copies. Reina hums softly again. That's called a motif, she says gently. It means your thoughts are trying to talk. Julian blinks. She says it like music is language. Maybe here it is. Julian places his hand on the edge of the bench. Not touching the boys. Just present. I can't play, he says softly. Reina glances at him. You don't have to. Her hands were smaller, he adds. But they filled this whole room. Reina nods. I know. She used to sing in keys I couldn't follow. She wasn't asking you to follow, Reina says. She was asking you to listen. Julian exhales. I didn't. Reina looks down. You're listening now. That silence returns, not empty, but full. Full of breath, and ghosts, and grace. The boys begin building something with the notes. Not a song, but a ritual. They press a pattern. Then they wait. Then again. It's slow. Intentional. Elias suddenly turns toward Reina. He touches her hand. She stops humming. Then Elias takes her index finger and presses it onto a key. The note rings out. He looks at her, then looks at the keys. She follows. Together they play. 1 note each, then 2, then silence. Then Noah adds his own. Julian watches the way Elias breathes through his nose between each press. The way Noah's fingers begin to form patterns he hasn't practiced. The way Reina leans in not to lead, but to reflect. And then, without fully realizing it, Julian reaches forward. He places 1 finger on a key, the lowest note. He presses it once. It rumbles, not loud, but deep. Reina doesn't flinch. The boys don't react. But Julian, he closes his eyes. It's the first time he's touched the piano since the funeral. And it doesn't hurt. It doesn't fix anything. But it doesn't hurt. Reina turns to him. You don't have to be a musician, she says. You just have to make space for the sound. Julian nods. He opens his eyes, looks at his sons. They press another note together. He joins them. It is not harmony, but it is music. Their kind. The kind built on patience and presence and the quiet bravery of staying in the room. The day begins in stillness. No rain, no wind, just pale morning light drifting through the linen curtains, brushing softly against the floorboards like a hand waking a sleeping child. Julian sits in the garden, cup of tea in hand, wearing a sweater he didn't know he owned. His feet are cold, but he doesn't mind. The quiet doesn't hurt anymore. It stretches warm and slow, like a room inhaling after holding its breath too long. From the kitchen window, Raina watches him. She doesn't interrupt. There's a rhythm now, a quiet pact in this house. No forced speech, no sudden noise. Only invitations. Inside, Noah is drawing on the floor beside the fireplace. Crayons spread out like petals. Elias is beside him, arranging pebbles in rows. Raina walks past them, humming a soft, familiar tune. The lullaby again. The one from the first night. Julian hears it from outside. He closes his eyes. He remembers her singing it, his wife, in the hospital bed, belly round, hand on his cheek. He didn't know what the tune meant then. He thought it was just melody. He knows better now. It was a prayer, promise, a blueprint for surviving silence. He rises, walks back into the house. The boys look up, but only briefly. They return to their tasks. But Raina glances at him. Something in her eyes. Different today. Stillness, but coiled, like a moment waiting. Julian steps into the living room, picks up a book, reads 2 pages. Not for distraction, just to be near. The boys don't speak. They never have. And yet, he feels them. More each day. And then it happens. Noah is stacking blocks on the rug, slow and precise. He hums softly, off-key, but intentional. Raina listens. She doesn't respond. Elias stares at the mobile Raina had brought down from the nursery, now hanging gently from the ceiling fan above the sofa. The room breathes. And then, Ma! It's soft. So soft it's almost not there. Julian freezes. Raina lifts her eyes. Elias looks up. His lips are parted. He doesn't repeat it, but the sound floats in the air like mist over still water. Ma! Julian drops the book. Noah stops moving. Raina doesn't speak. She kneels beside Elias, her hands still, her breath quiet. Elias turns his head slowly, looks at her, touches her knee, then whispers again, this time not up to the ceiling, but to her. Mama! Julian falls to his knees. He doesn't mean to. His body just sinks, like the weight inside finally became too much. He buries his face in his hands. He doesn't cry, not at first. He shakes, and then, only then, the tears come, raw, unhindered, from somewhere deep, somewhere he locked up with the door to the nursery. Raina stays where she is. She places a hand on Elias's back, then reaches, gently, toward Julian, not to hold, just to let him feel that she's there. Noah crawls forward, kneeling beside his brother. Then Raina does something she hasn't done before. She sings, the full lullaby, with words, the same one the boys heard in the womb, the same one their mother wrote in the notebooks, the one Julian never let himself learn. It is gentle. It is whole. It does not rush. Julian sobs, openly, with the kind of ache that leaves room behind it. Raina's voice never breaks. It wraps around them. A song older than grief, louder than fear. A song of invitation, of healing, of home. Elias leans against her shoulder. Noah presses his forehead to Julian's knee. Julian doesn't move. He just stays there, wrapped in song, in breath, in silence made sacred. He whispers one word, not to anyone, just to the moment. Thank you. Not loud, not performative, just real. Raina finishes the lullaby, and for the first time in this house, the silence that follows is not empty. It is full of God. The house breathes differently now. Not louder, not busier, just alive. Windows stay open longer. The garden gate no longer creaks from disuse. The birds return to their tree near the nursery window, the same one that had been trimmed too low for years. It's as if the walls themselves have relaxed, as if they, too, were waiting for someone to come home. Julian walks through the sunroom barefoot. He's holding Elias's notebook. It's not just scribbles anymore. There are short lines now, shapes repeated, symbols of sound. Raina called it visual humming. Julian calls it brave. He finds Raina outside, kneeling near the herb garden. Her hands are muddy, sleeves rolled to the elbows, eyes squinting in the sun. She doesn't look up when he approaches. She knows it's him by the rhythm of his steps. "Basil's too close to the time," she says without greeting. "They'll fight." Julian smiles faintly. "Didn't know herbs could fight." "Oh, they do." Quietly. He kneels beside her. Takes effort. His knees pop. He's not used to the ground. She glances at him once. "You're early." "I canceled the meeting." "Why?" "They can wait." He said mama again this morning. Raina wipes her hands on a rag tucked in her waistband. "To me?" "No. To his brother." She looks at him. Julian nods. Noah kissed him on the cheek after, then handed him a green crayon. "I didn't understand it, but I didn't need to." She leans back on her heels. "I think they're building something," he continues. "A language, not ours, but theirs. They've always had it," Raina says. "They just needed someone to believe it was real." Julian watches her. There are 100 things he could say. About gratitude. About sorrow. About how her presence broke open a sealed place in this house that no therapist or nanny could even find. Instead, he reaches into his pocket, pulls out a folded paper, hands it to her. Raina opens it. Contract. Permanent placement. Full benefits. Her own wing if she wants it. No expiration date. She stares at it. Then at him. "I don't need a wing. I know. I just need space. To breathe." "You have it," Julian says. "And whatever else you need." She folds the paper again. "Do you want me to stay?" He nods. She tilts her head. "Why?" "Because they want you to." "And you?" Julian pauses. Then, "Because for the first time in my life, I want to learn how to stay." Raina looks down at her hands. Mud in her nails. Dirt on her palms. Then she smiles. Not wide. Just enough. She stands, brushing off her knees. Julian stands too. The boys come running from the back door. Slow but sure. Noah is holding something. A photograph. A drawing, actually. Crayon. 3 stick figures. This time they're holding hands. Julian. Raina. And the boys in between. Noah hands it to Julian. Julian takes it like it's glass. Elias tugs on Raina's sleeve. "Mama," he says again. Steady. Not like a fluke this time. Like a word he owns. Julian looks at her. She doesn't correct him. She doesn't flinch. She just touches his head gently. "Baby," she whispers. The sun breaks fully through the clouds. Julian folds the picture carefully and slips it into his pocket, over his heart. Later that evening, they eat together at the long dining table. No staff, no silver cloches, just simple food, warm and shared. Elias giggles when Raina makes a face with mashed sweet potato. Noah mimics her. Julian watches, laughing quietly. A sound he hadn't heard in his own voice in years. There are no speeches, no declarations, no titles, just breath, just presence, just family, not by blood, but by choice, by healing, by love that speaks even when words don't. And when the night comes, and the twins are asleep, and Raina is closing the last curtain, Julian stands by the doorway and says, almost in a whisper, "You saved us." Raina turns slowly. "No," she says. "You came back." He nods. And in the stillness of the house, as the stars blink awake, there is no fanfare, no applause, just peace. And in this home once ruled by silence, peace is the loudest sound of all.